How many times have you walked into a room and immediately forgotten why you went there? Or met someone and 5 seconds later, you have no idea what their name is. Yet somehow, your brain remembers random song lyrics from 10 years ago. And this raises a question, and what's at the heart of this video, which is how does memory work and why does it fail us so often? Now to explain this, we're going to use what's called the multi-store model. It's this framework for how information starts in the brain and then transfers all the way to long-term permanent storage. We're also going to use this real-life example of a parking garage, because we all know we parked in a random spot and forgotten where we are. So this is going to provide a nice real-life example as we discuss. So let's start with this, sensory input. When we think about memories, we want to think about them as sensory experiences. Memories can be in the forms of smell. It could be olfactory information, right? Smells can remind me of maybe popcorn. They could be visual information, right? I have a lot of memories of images of my family in my head. And they could also be auditory, right? Things that we hear. It could also be tactile, my hands on my skin, and gustatory taste, all 5 of our senses. And this is important. Memories are not just random thoughts that pop in your head. It's not like I have a storage or filing cabinet I pull away. They are sensory experiences that we weave together into a memory. And if we think about a parking garage, we're probably smelling the gasoline or different types of things in the air. We can see different signs like level 3 or different cars around us, or auditory, right? I'm hearing honks and people talking or arguing on the side. So all my senses are interacting in that parking garage. Now, all the sensory information is going to start in our first holding tank or storage area, what we call sensory memory. What is called sensory memory? This is a very brief, I'm talking about a fraction of a second holding tank of information. Now notice I have the word capacity and duration under each box. Capacity is the amount of information that can be held in that area, and duration is how long information can be held in that area. So let's write this in together. For capacity, it's actually rather large, right? My senses are taking in tons of information, sight, sound, smells, all the time. Here's the problem though. Duration, fraction of a second, okay? We'll even use the word milliseconds to show you kind of how long it can last. In other words, our brains are being bombarded with information all the time, right? That doesn't mean you recognize it, but our senses are picking up light waves and sound waves. We're seeing things, hearing things, but not necessarily encoding it into the brain. Now, out of all of our senses, there are 2 of them that have had the most research when it comes to sensory memory. One is vision, and psychologists call this iconic memory. Okay? In other words, information can be stored in sensory memory in the form of visual information. We call this iconic, okay, or visual information, okay? So imagine seeing a black Ford that you drove past in the parking garage. You saw it, your eyes detected it, but then a fraction of a second, you forgot it, right? Think about it like a lightning strike. You see it, and then the light flashes, you see it for a split second, and then it goes away forever, okay? We also have sound. We can store information in the form of auditory information. We call this echoic, okay? Echoic for auditory sound, right? So maybe there's a song playing on level 3. Right? And you can detect the pitch, the tone, but after a second, it's gone forever. Here's a nice memory technique for iconic. Iconic, think I for visual. And for echoic, think echo for sound, okay? So we have all this information for a fraction of a second. But here's the thing. If you're paying attention, that's the key word here. If you are, let me write that in. Paying, that's my green arrow. If you are paying attention like a spotlight, that information is going to be transferred to our next level. Do you know what that's called? This is our short-term memory. Okay, what's it called? Short-term memory. Or what has been renamed recently, which is really important, working memory. Okay, so short-term memory or working memory. Okay, so what's the difference? While sensory is this brief holding tank, short-term memory is more of an active thinking space. For capacity, it's actually rather small, right? We think our short-term memory is great. It's not. It's anywhere between 5 and 9 bits of information. In other words, it's a phone number, right? Anything more than a phone number, my brain is like way too much information. Imagine somebody gave you an order and they said, order me these 20 things from McDonald's. And you're like, I can only remember a few of them. Yeah, maybe like 5 items I can remember. Anything more than that? Probably not. And the duration, yes, it's a little more than milliseconds, but it's not infinite, right? Maybe 15 to 30 seconds is good for my short-term memory, okay? Short-term memory, okay. So think about you are driving up to our parking garage and you're paying attention to level 3. You're like, oh, level 3, right? Or maybe it's the color blue. It's the color blue. Oh, I parked next to a Hyundai, right? So you're paying attention and now we're storing for just a little bit longer. Now, notice it's called working memory. Why is it called working memory? Because it's not just a storage tank. I'm actively using it, right? Think about solving a math problem and I have to hold information as I do something. Or I'm at a grocery store and I'm holding information in my head about where items are, what I've gotten, what I still need to get in my cart. You're using that information. This would be called the working memory model. So let's actually go over this model, which is going to help us really understand this stage, and also we're connected to part of the brain. Now notice that we're up level 3, right? We're connecting it still back to our parking garage. Well, you're probably in your head going, okay, level 3, level 3, level 3. Psychologists call this part the phonological loop. What is it called? Phonological, I know it's a big one, loop, right? Think about the word phone, right? Phone, boop, boop, right? That's a nice memory technique. This is your inner voice, right? Level 3, level 3, level 3, right? Or blue, 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 whatever it is, right? That's our phonological loop. We also have the visual component of working memory. This is called the visuospatial sketchpad. Ooh, I know it's a big one. Visuospatial sketchpad. And this is about the visual information, right? Kind of like Iconic and Echoic. This is the visual stuff. So for example, I am in the parking garage and I'm visualizing, okay, there's the E for elevator and X is where my car is. And I'm kind of visualizing in my head when I return, like where I need to go, right? Like kind of like directions, right? So visual is vision and spatial is spatial awareness, like directions. And the central executive, this is the boss. This is directing attention between both. Do I focus on my inner voice? Do I focus on where I am? It is essentially the CEO. In terms of the parts of the brain, the phonological loop is really connected to our Broca's area, up at B, right? That helps us to speak. Our visual spatial sketchpad. Think about vision. That's our visual cortex, right? In our occipital lobe, right? OC occipital lobe. And for direction, spatial awareness, that is our parietal lobe. Okay, our parietal lobe. And what do you think of the central executive? Who's the boss? The executive functions that directs attention, right? That's a big one. That is our prefrontal cortex, right? So most people think the hippocampus plays a role in short-term memory, but it's actually the prefrontal cortex. Now, is there a way to increase my short-term memory? There is. The number one technique is what we call rehearsal. Just rehearse it, okay? I know it doesn't seem like a amazing task, like, ooh, something crazy. No, just rehearse. We call this maintenance rehearsal. Go back to our parking garage. Okay, level 3, level 3, level 3. Just keep saying it over and over and over again. You can also use mnemonic devices or memory techniques like chunking, where you group things together or create acronyms or songs, but rehearsal is the best technique. Okay, so we've paid attention. We have in our short-term memory, we are working with it, right? We're trying to remember where we are. There's my inner voice. And then we got to hopefully get it into our third stage. Do we know what this is called? This is encoding. This is a big one. This is when learning occurs. This is transferring information, right, all here, to hopefully a relatively permanent place called long-term memory. Okay, long-term memory. Now, if we focus on the word encoding, what we're saying is that we have paid attention enough, we've created connections in our mind, and we are moving it to a place that hopefully we remember it forever. At least that's the goal. For encoding, what we're saying is the brain is actually changing. We're creating kind of synaptic connections, meaningful connections, in order for it to move past short-term memory. And we'll come back to different strategies for long-term memory in a moment. But let's talk about long-term memory. One, it is relatively permanent storage tank. In terms of capacity, well, it's limitless. I mean, there's no capacity to remembering. You can remember infinite amount of stuff in long-term memory. And for duration, it could last a lifetime, right? Now, it might be lost through decay or memory interference, but it is possible to remember things for your entire life. Now, there are actually subcategories of long-term memory we need to know as well. For example, memories can be explicit, long-term memories, also called declarative, meaning that you actually have to think about it, right? I have to say it out loud in order for me to know it, okay? Like, where's my car parked, okay? What's the name of the parking garage? And there are different categories. There are semantic explicit memories, right? These are kind of facts or general knowledge about the world. They're episodic. Episodic. These are personal, right? Things about your life, like what day did you park your car, okay? There's also, opposite of explicit, we have implicit memories, okay? What are implicit? Implicit are things you talk about. These are things that you do, things that come so natural, there's no actually conscious awareness, you're actually just doing it. So this might be things like, we call procedural memory, which are skills, like riding a bike, procedural, okay? All right, skills, okay? Or it could be habit forming, right? Like smoking or scrolling on your phone, just things that we do unconsciously. And think about steering wheel, right? I don't really think about driving, I just kind of go. And so as I'm driving up my parking garage, I just kind of do it. And I drive, I don't really think about it. It is an implicit memory. Now, how do we actually make sure things are encoded well and stay in long-term memory for a long time? Well, there's a lot of techniques, but let's talk about a few of them. One is what we call elaborative rehearsal. Okay, elaborative rehearsal. And what this means is we're going to make connections, meaningful connections, between things already in our memory. Imagine, for example, that I'm at level 3 and my son is 3 years old. I'm going to make that connection. Oh, 3, my son is 3, right? Or maybe it's the color blue. The Chicago Cubs are the color blue. I'm going to make those connections, elaborate rehearsal. I'm much more likely to remember it. We also have something called the spacing effect, which means cramming is not a good or effective way to study or remember something. So instead of just remembering level 3, the moment I get off the elevator, every 10 minutes as I walk through the store, I'm going to remember what level I am, right? I'm going to space out as I retrieve it, and that should really help me. So space out is really good. Another one is just visual, right? Visual imagery, okay? I'm going to remember the car that was parked next to me. I'm going to remember what the color is, right? Visual in my head. Now, a memory is not really memory unless our last part, which is I have to retrieve the memory, okay? I have to get it out. So as I get back to my car, I get back on the elevator, I'm like, okay, do I remember where I parked? Well, what can I do? Well, hopefully we paid attention. Hopefully we did our strategies, but also what we can look for are retrieval cues. What are retrieval cues? Smell is a retrieval cue. This smells like level 3. Auditory stuff could be, right? I hear a sound. Ooh, that sounds like where I parked. It could be an emotion, right? Or state of mind. There are a lot of different cues we can use to help retrieve our memories and, of course, where we parked. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I really hope you learned something, and I hope we improved your memory. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, write a comment below. I'll see you next time.